And I'm going to briefly introduce yourself, and then you can go ahead and the platform is yours. So Dr. Kalani Pettison has been teaching in the English department at Texas A&M since 2016. She is an instructional associate professor. She is currently serving as a coordinator for English 104, Composition and Rhetoric. Within that role, she is responsible for developing and distributing course resources and materials to faculty and graduate student instructors, syllabi and course templates, especially to the student instructors, and mentoring and training graduate student instructors in teaching in the composition classroom. She has been interested in the intersections of writing technologies and composition since graduate school and has attended and participated in the generative AI related professional development and conversations in her department as time and teaching have allowed. She will be participating in the CTE generative AI related cohort starting this summer and is planning on conducting SOTL study over students' attitudes towards generative AI in composition classroom in the upcoming year. Thank you so much. That's awesome. That's so super great. I'm super impressed.
I have been really wanting to attend all of these Hear from Peer sessions, but I teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 12:40 to 1:30 this year, so I haven't been able to actually come to any before. So that's why this is an odd day of the week compared to the whole rest of the schedule. But I'm looking forward to watching the other recordings when I get a chance.
Sure.
I'm gonna. Can you allow me to share my screen?
I think you are.
Yeah, I pushed the share, it doesn't let me.
Yes.
Okay. Where does it not give me my option?
Let me try.
Okay, we can do this one.
All right. Yes.
Does that come through okay?
Yes, it does.
All right. All right, so my basic goal with developing a classroom and assignments is to try to basically that students should be aware when they're using GenAI. If they're gonna use it, and if since the writing tool, my feeling is that in the introduction to writing classroom is where we should be discussing this and making sure that we talk about it. And since critical thinking and awareness is a lot of what we want to teach students how to teach themselves, right? My goal with the strategies I've tried in the classroom has been to help students be aware of the consequences so that when they use it, they're using it with their eyes open, hence the name of this presentation, this discussion. So first, I think I want students to be aware of the potential consequences of their GenAI use and like participation in the whole GenAI development on like the world. So impact on economy, impact on environment, impact on gaps in access, that kind of thing. I want students to be aware of the potential consequences of using GenAI on their own skills, on their own learning, on their creativity, and that they should be aware of potential consequences to whatever it is that they're making, right? Thinking about in terms of if you use it to write a paper, what does that do to the paper that's being written? So how does it affect the world? How does it affect them? How does it affect the output that they're using? So I believe there's 4 strategies here, and then some things I'm planning on talking to the future. So that's kind of how I've organized this, is like what's one strategy I did and how did that work out and what did we see? So one, when you're teaching math to elementary school students, right, you give them Legos or M&Ms or marbles in order to practice addition and subtraction. And what matters is the addition and subtraction and division, not necessarily whether or not it's marbles or Legos or whatever. So that's the concept of manipulatives in the elementary school classroom. And a lot of times in composition and rhetoric, we want to, it doesn't really matter as much what it is that we're looking at to see the rhetorical devices, well, the rhetorical situation, to analyze how the argument's being made. It doesn't matter as much what the article is about as how it works. right? And so one of the ways that I increased awareness of GenAI, I'm probably going to say GenAI and AI interchangeably. I mean GenAI if I say AI. That one of the ways is to have it be that instead of using an article, say, about the ethics of eating dog, or an article about whether or not homework is good for students, or whatever these argument articles that we find to use, I chose articles that were about different perspectives on GenAI. This semester there's about 9, and like one of them's about GenAI and water, and one of them's about the positives of GenAI for identifying diseases or leaks. One is about the, so some of them are negatives, some of them are positives, but different aspects of consequences of GenAI use. And so there were discussion boards, read this article and talk about who was the author and what is the purpose of the article and who is the author writing to, who's the audience, all those kinds of things. Do a rhetorical précis, a summary and analysis of the article. And it just so happened that what they were reading about was GenAI, but that wasn't actually what was being taught. What was being taught is the rhetorical situation. So that's that's how manipulatives is the best analogy I could think to come up with. But there might be a better way to say that, official teaching language. So then they wanted to, that the assignment goals don't actually have anything directly to do with AI, but since they're reading about AI, they actually will learn a little bit about some of the different perspectives and impacts. So because they're exposed to specific arguments from multiple perspectives, from reliable or credible sources, usually for a popular audience, they may have heard in generalities the impact of AI on drinking water or something like that. But the article is giving them actual numbers and the study that was done by MIT, right? And so it helps to make the big picture fuzzy ideas that they have something to do with something about this that they have heard of before, maybe helps to give it concrete that this is what the actual argument is, and to help them see what people are actually saying and not just in generalities. And then we would talk about using GenAI for revision on a paper, for instance. And they were aware of issues that they hadn't thought about before they had to read these articles for the discussion board. So they might say, well, I don't really want to use AI because I don't want to contribute to the environmental problem if I don't have to. So I'll just do it with I'll just make an image by hand instead of making an image, having an image generator do it. Not all of them, right? One or two here and there, but they're aware of what the possible image issues might be. And so if they're choosing to use GenAI, then they're doing it knowing what they're contributing to, right? Second strategy was that we actually the goal was to do an evaluation paper, to make an evaluative claim, evaluative judgment based on criteria. And so I had students make, like, again, the skill or the goal isn't directly related to AI, but the prompt required them to use AI to do it. So what they would evaluate was how well did a particular platform perform a specific type of task. So students worked in teams, they chose a type of task, and then they each ran it through their chosen platform, and then they had 4 examples to look at in order to judge how well the GenAI did the task. And so we had how well does Gemini create album covers based on lyrics for music? How well does Copilot give recipes for cooking chicken, right? And so in this case, again, the skill being evaluated wasn't the content knowledge of AI, but they were using AI and its results in order to demonstrate that they know how to evaluate based on specific criteria and build paragraph development and all those writing skills. So it's an indirect engagement with AI rather than AI being the thing being taught, but it means that we have this conversation in class, and they learned like certain limitations of whatever platforms and tasks they had assigned. So they found out, they tried to ask Gemini how to buy a car and to have a used car and a visual guide, and they're like, the images it gives doesn't use real letters. It's just made up words, it's made up letters, right? And so obviously not, I mean, the platforms are evolving all the time and there's the professional versions and not, but getting frustrated with what it's trying to do and having to look closely at the details and not just accept that what it gives is good. That some of that critical skepticism seems to have transferred to other products of AI that they also will look at with a more skeptical lens and want to examine, is this really a good product that it has produced? So they also began to understand, like, not all of the platforms are the same. They don't all have the same strengths and weaknesses. Some are better at some things than others, and that's a useful understanding of the tools as they are. So strategy 3 was thinking through individual writing process steps. So this is a really oversimplification, and we don't see the writing as a linear from A, B, C, and do this all in this order. It's very recursive. But we talked about how does AI, what are the benefits and drawbacks for using AI for, say, brainstorming? They said, well, it comes up with more ideas, or it doesn't. But also the fact that brainstorming is a skill you can lose. So do you want to be reliant on having to use a computer for creativity? And also that AI can only come up with ideas that other people have had, because that's, it's based on the input. It can't do anything new. So those kinds of discussions. Well, for research, in what ways does it help with finding and deciding sources to use? In what ways does it not? If you're planning, I think my spacing on this slide got way out of hand, but for organizing, again, organization is a skill you can lose. Drafting, if you have AI draft something for you, you didn't think it, you just read it again. So how is that different from reading something else? It's not your thoughts. And then revising and editing, like we talked about how if you have GenAI revise your paper for grammatical mistakes, that might be a useful way to use it, but it will also change your wording and make you sound exactly the same as everything else. And so GenAI's homogenization of voice, that it makes everybody sound the same. I asked them to do these benefits and drawbacks and discussion. They paid attention to like what the output would be, but also the output on themselves. They pointed out about the loss of creativity, although I had said that at some point, like 4 weeks earlier. They considered environmental impact if everybody did this all the time. They understood a lot more nuance, I think. I mean, this is not formal results, but things that I think compared to previous semesters is that they discussed that there's a difference between putting your paper in and saying, can you fix the errors, versus putting your paper in and saying, can you point out errors, and then they fixing it themselves. We discussed Grammarly and how does that go. One student used it to assist in translation, and one student used it to do all of the translation for them because they were originally writing in their own language, the language they were comfortable with. I have a couple of international students in my class, and they talked about how this doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't work well to have it just do it for them. And then the 4th strategy is I have them do extensive documentation that they're allowed to use GenAI, but if they do, they have to copy paste the whole entire conversation they have with chat every time they have a conversation with chat into the end as an appendix. And so placing GenAI use as raw data that has contributed to their paper as opposed to a source, positioning that chat as and because they have to document it, they're required to think about it. And so it makes visual what could be an invisible tool, and they have to be aware of every time they use it. And hopefully the hassle of the documentation helps students to make those conscious choices about whether or not it's worth it to use GenAI for the particular task. And sometimes it is, right? So future ideas, I was with a panel with Dr. Laura Mendel, and she's having students purposely write their papers with GenAI and then having to fix them, revise them for, rhetoric and argument and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a wonderful idea. I'm planning on incorporating that in the fall. I'm going to have students use that evaluation assignment maybe and start creating kind of a compilation of what platforms are good at what kinds of tasks, right? Based on particular strengths and weaknesses. I'd like to use Notebook LM and our textbook is an open educational resource, so I think it'd be really interesting to feed our whole entire textbook to Notebook LM and see how that allows students to engage with the textbook content in an interesting way. But for now, I think treating GenAI as a tool we mention and use regularly in this class, and like having these conversations just out in the open has helped to demystify it. And I say de-demonize, like a lot of students were like, oh, GenAI automatically means lack of academic integrity, or GenAI automatically means it'll come up with a good paper. And I think in class, we've kind of both shown it's not going to be a good paper. You just use it to do it for you. And also that it's not inherently evil to use it, right? That there's, it's kind of pulled away the students who came into class with a kind of extreme view of never, never, or it's amazing and always right, right? And do you think more students are aware of how and when to use the tools appropriately as part of a task, not to do the whole task, and aware of current limitations and ethical implications depending on its use and development and all of that kind of thing? All right, the end.